Today, we need to talk about Nintendo's 2024 games lineup, assuming the reports are true that there's no Switch 2 slated to release this calendar year, like many were expecting up to this point, including myself. Since we made the update video around the Switch 2 news with all of the internal reports from VGC, Eurogamer, Nate the Hate, and many others chiming in saying that this is indeed the plan, that Nintendo internally has told their dev teams to prepare for a early 2025 launch as opposed to a late 2024 launch. Well, we now have Bloomberg weighing in on this too, and essentially backing up the exact same claims, with now even March of 2025 at the earliest is the new statement that's flying around online. That means we're more than a year out from this console potentially releasing at this point in time, and the big claim is that Nintendo has chosen to do this to give their software teams more time to perfect their first-party software lineup to have a strong launch lineup with this console. And if that is indeed the case, you have to speculate and wonder, what else does Nintendo have left in the pipeline in 2024 if that is indeed where all of their efforts are at right now? They're developing games for the next-gen console, meaning what are we going to get to play with the current Nintendo Switch we have today? And that's the question we're going to be answering in this video, because there are a number of hints to that. In fact, if you just look at the roadmap of games that has been released so far in 2024 and the majority of the games we know to be coming the rest of this year in 2024, that is a big telling factor. The other outstanding rumor that has yet to be verified at the time of filming this video, but it's coming from Pioro, which has a flawless track record on leaking Nintendo Direct announcements and information. Well, he's saying a partner direct is taking place this week, so that announcement hasn't happened at the time I'm filming this, but it could be around the corner at legitimately any moment. And if that's the case, it speaks volumes about what Nintendo might be planning with their first party lineup, because rather than having a traditional mainline February direct like we typically see them hold, they are opting to just show the partners games, the third party stuff, but none of their own first party titles. So there's a ton of stuff to unpack. We're going to get on the same page with everything. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick off the conversation by examining where we are at today with Nintendo's first party game releases, or Nintendo's own published games that we've had released in 2024 so far. Another code/recollection was our January game, and that is now out and available. Not up my alley, but a port/remaster collection of a DS and Wii title brought back to modern consoles, given a modern coat of paint. And it's one of the more cult classic Nintendo games. Definitely doesn't have like a huge fan following from my understanding, but that's out and available as of right now. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, of course, is the February title that just released, and this is a remake of a Game Boy Advance classic. Yeah, they added in some additional stages, some additional modes with co-op mode and things to go through the game, but it's very much largely just a reimagining with modern visuals of that Game Boy Advance experience, and that's the second release for Nintendo in 2024. We, of course, know to expect Princess Peach Showtime, which has gotten a lot of hype and publicity lately from Nintendo. They're putting out all of their overview trailers and deep dive trailers that we would sometimes see featured in a mainline first party direct at this time if we did indeed see them hold one. Well, as opposed to doing that, they're just doing social media posts revealing numerous new costumes for Peach that we didn't know about prior to last week. And so it's gotten a lot of good coverage. Like I said, it is the only original brand new title, so keep that in mind, that we know about in 2024 so far, and that will be the big March release for this year. Now then you talk about the shifting of the conversation to games that we know about but that don't have a release date, and both of these are HD ports or remasters, and that is both Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, trying not to say Dark Moon because I'm used to calling it that. Anyway, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is what they're branding it, a 3DS game that I am glad to see brought over. I think there's a ton of handpicked 3DS titles that Nintendo could give this treatment to and have an opportunity to sell on a home console like the Switch, or a hybrid console rather, where you can at least play it on a big screen experience. So we don't know the release date for that, but it could very well be the April title, it could very well be the May title, and then that kind of coincides with when we might see Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, which is the other title we know about that is again an HD port or remaster, and that could slot into either one of these months as well, because it's already been rated by the ESRB and the ratings boards online. So really both of those games are essentially more than likely finished and ready to go. We haven't heard any kind of communication from Nintendo around their release dates, but I'm really assuming they're just going to take to social media to do a surprise drop, since we're not expecting them to hold a mainline general direct, and those could easily shift around as the April, May, or even June titles for Nintendo. And historically, we would be talking about Nintendo for the most part having a big game for every month of the year, as they typically do in the Nintendo Switch life cycle. But I think we're not going to necessarily see them stick to that this time around, and that is what some of the industry analysts are saying and things. If Switch 2 does get launched in early 2025, we probably will have a very light 2024 from a games perspective rather. But I do think that if we are to believe, we probably won't get major first-party communication from Nintendo until June. Well, then we have to start asking what games are going to carry us through the rest of the year. And I should mention that we are expecting a Pokemon Presents to take place around February 27th, which is Pokemon Day, and we will likely learn about some new Pokemon games. The rumor is Black and White remasters. That's kind of what I'm expecting to be like the holiday time release, and maybe there's even a Legends game that is announced in there as well. And if all three of those games, or I guess really two, if it's the Black and White remasters and it's the Legends game that all drop in 2024, Pokemon may indeed be the savior for this year, especially at the holiday season, in terms of what we might be able to expect for sure to take place in 2024, because I am fully expecting the Pokemon Company to release some new content on Nintendo Switch this year, and we should learn about that soon at least. But then we've also had rumblings in the news recently coming from Jeff Grubb stating that he's been hearing, or has heard in the past, we should make this very clear, this is actually older info, but that Nintendo is gearing up some kind of big marketing campaign for Metroid around May 2024. Now, he makes a point to say that things can change with Nintendo, and obviously this is the guy who was talking about Metroid Prime Remastered for the longest time before it finally dropped, but he was under the impression it would launch in 2022. He even bet his hair and beard on the line for that, and he had to shave that off because he is a man of his word, and he missed the timing on that Nintendo release. But to his surprise and to our surprise, Nintendo shadow dropped it at the February 2023 Nintendo Direct, and I do think that something Metroid in May, or even if they just push it back to be a part of the June Direct and it's another shadow drop announcement, is likely going to happen. I think the logical conclusion for a Metroid marketing campaign is just to continue to push these Prime remasters out one at a time. Maybe Prime 2 and 3 get bundled together, since they weren't quite as big of a marquee standout game as Metroid Prime 1 was, especially from a sales perspective. And the rumor has it that they're maybe not getting the full HD remaster treatment that Prime 1 received, which might lead you to believe they're more like a simple Pikmin 1 and 2 HD upres, very true to form, the original textures and things like that, but just upscaled to a higher resolution and some modern quality of life improvements and modern controls and things like that. That's more or less what I'm expecting to happen with those, but maybe Nintendo does stretch them out 6 months apart or so, so that way they actually have more games to fill out this year that is looking increasingly like it might be a lighter year on content, and I could see those being revealed and dropped really at any time. And then there is the slightest chance that Metroid Prime 4 is ready to go for a holiday 2024 launch, which would put it on the Switch that we have today, and maybe even not have a Switch 2 version. And assuming the rumors are true about Switch 2 being backwards compatible, maybe we just see it run a little bit better on that enhanced console. But it's also one of those games that I could see easily being slotted into a dual release strategy, like we saw with Breath of the Wild on the Wii U and the Switch, and we saw with Twilight Princess on the Wii and the GameCube. Like, it could be that cross-generational game that gets a version on both, and that might mean that we shouldn't expect it until March of next year. Now, we also know that Bandai Namco is working on some kind of 3D action adventure remaster of some sort due to some hiring posts, and there's a lot of talk and rumor online that it may indeed be Kid Icarus Uprising. That could be another perfect game to throw out on the 2024 lineup when we don't know about much. It doesn't have to be Kid Icarus Uprising, it could be something else in their wheelhouse. There's even some rumors of some kind of Star Fox remaster taking place, but I do think that something will be like a 3D action adventure Nintendo Classic will drop this year as another port or remaster, and I think that's going to be the most of what Nintendo will reveal outside of the Pokemon games for new games this year in 2024, assuming that they're getting all of their big stuff lined up for Switch 2. And it might be the perfect opportunity for Kid Icarus to really sell well, because Nintendo fans, including myself, are going to be wanting to have new content to play, and if you drop it in a year where releases are kind of scarce, it might actually give it that much extra exposure to the fan base. So we'll we'll have to wait and see on that. I would also love to see a game like F-Zero GX Remastered potentially make it over. I think that that's something that could easily be ported, up-resed, and given to a modern audience just to see what the F-Zero response is from fans. I mean, I really think that Nintendo could do a lot with online play and the competitive scene with that game, with 30 racers competing online all at once. F-Zero 99 seems to be getting a ton of love with new content and updates, and I'm hopeful that F-Zero GX Remastered might make it into the conversation for 2024. But two games that I do think could be the big holiday titles, and maybe we only get one of them, not both, but I think the games that Nintendo will need to release at some point in the holiday season to really give the Switch that final push from a sales perspective and get it to as many units as it can sell in its 7th full year in the market, technically the 8th year of sales. I mean, it'll be 8 full years as of March of next year. But anyway, I think it's finally time to see Wind Waker and or Twilight Princess potentially hit this console. Maybe Nintendo, knowing that they would have a light software year if something like this happened, where they needed more time to develop their first party launch games for their next gen hardware. That's the reason they've been holding on to these games the entire time. There's a lot of people who are so burnt out on the rumor mill speculation talk of these games that they don't want to hear about them anymore, and I don't blame you for that. But there is still reliable people in the gaming industry claiming that these games are done, finished, and just sitting there. And we know Nintendo does just sit on games to release them later on. Look at Advance Wars Reboot Camp 1+2. I mean, we didn't see Nintendo legitimately just sit on that for a whole year because of real world events. We also know that Metroid Prime Remastered was probably done long before it was actually given to us as a shadow drop, just because they wanted to align it with the time, the launch lead up for Metroid Prime 4. They do stuff like this, and Nintendo has the broader zoomed out picture of what their software release schedule is going to look like over the course of time, and they know that internal delays happen all the time, and they're not afraid to give something more time when it needs more time. And could Wind Waker and or Twilight Princess be the perfect thing to keep the Zelda fan base really in tune with purchasing new games this year? We know that we've heard those quotes that Nintendo likes to release something Zelda every single calendar year if possible in the Nintendo Switch generation, and that hasn't happened flawlessly this entire generation, but for the most part it has. And I'm curious if we will finally see one or both of these games make it over. In a perfect world, we'll see them release them at a combo pack at $60 total, but they could indeed release them individually at $60 a piece, especially considering it's not tied to any kind of Zelda anniversary rumors like it once was. So we're gonna have to wait and see for those, but I do think that if all the games mentioned come out in addition to some 1 or 2 new games that might be saved in the pipeline that we don't know about, maybe a Mario Galaxy 2 port standalone. I mean, that's a fantastic game that's just missing from our ability to play it on the Nintendo Switch, and you can literally play almost every other Mario game on the Switch. It would be awesome to see that one come over, and maybe we do actually see them do some kind of DK game or even a country remaster. 1, 2, and 3 all get brought over together as a collection pack, and that's kind of the Donkey Kong game that we get for now, and then DK's big new adventure is saved for the next gen console. I could see Nintendo slotting in 1 or 2 big surprises that we don't know to expect, and it sounds like I'm going to hunker down and wait until June. That's kind of where I'm setting my expectations to hear about major first party stuff. We might see a social media reveal here or there leading up until that timeline, but it does seem like we're going to have to buckle in for a lighter year than usual than we're used to for Nintendo content, and we're going to have to be prepared for that, assuming these reports are true. Of course, if you're somebody that thinks that these reports have no credence to them, maybe we don't have to be worried, and maybe end of 2024 Switch 2 will still drop and we'll have a ton of stuff to play and talk about. But that's really where I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What do you make of all of this? Do you think Nintendo's 2024 is now in question with the amount of new games that they might release? Are you a fan of any of the games that aren't officially announced that I talked about in this video? And if so, which ones are you hopeful that we do see released this calendar year? And are you more or less worried now that Nintendo might have a lighter 2024 up their sleeves if this console delay is indeed really the case? And how does that make you feel if you're somebody who normally keeps up with all of the Nintendo Switch releases as they come out? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch the video on screen next if you haven't already. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.